Donald Trump says he will take part in all 3 presidential debates, but he's laying out some conditions. Trump told Time magazine he'll try to renegotiate some of the specifics of those debates. He had objected to the dates of the debates, saying the calendar was rigged. And he also said some moderators would be unacceptable to him. While Trump is lagging in the polls, Hillary Clinton has 51% of the vote and Trump 41%. That's according to a new survey from NBC News and SurveyMonkey. And it comes as another prominent Republican, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, says she won't vote for Trump. She wrote in the Washington Post, "I am a lifelong Republican, but Donald Trump does not reflect historical Republican values, nor the inclusive approach to governing that is critical to healing the divisions in our country." Joining me now is senior political editor Steve Chaggaris. Good to see you, Steve.
Hey, Vlad.
So let's start with these comments about the debates. What do you make of them?
Well, I have to say, I'm not terribly surprised. I know a lot of people were speculating that he might not do all these debates, but I remember back in earlier this year when he skipped the Iowa debate before the Iowa caucuses, the Republican primary debate, and then he came in second in Iowa. And I remember folks around Trump suggesting that maybe it wasn't the greatest idea to skip that debate before the Iowa caucuses. So that had to have been in their minds as they sort of were figuring out how to deal with the fall debates. They were obviously pressured because Hillary Clinton's campaign put out a statement yesterday saying they're going to accept all 3 debates. Let's go. What do the Trump people say? And so this is his reaction to her saying, fine, I'll do all 3. And it's time to negotiate some of these terms. Now, the negotiation question, what is he able to negotiate? Probably not going to be on the level of dates and actual format of the debates, but maybe more in terms of where they stand on the stage and smaller items that are involved in the debates, but not the larger aspects of it.
Steve, I want to ask you, Donald Trump says that he has so far been successful. He's gotten 14 million votes in the primary process, and the way that he is the way that his supporters, his voters like him to be. But we've started to see a subtle shift, for example, yesterday with that economic speech that he delivered. Do you think that that's what we're going to see going forward, or is it, as some people have said, leopard can't change his spots? That was a teleprompter speech. When he gets on the campaign trail at a rally, it's the same old Trump.
Well, it wasn't the first time we've seen a teleprompter speech from him, and it's not the first time we've seen him try to act more, quote, presidential, which is, I think, what a lot of Republican leaders would like to see from him, really to sort of stay on message, continue to hammer Hillary Clinton, and stay out of getting in trouble in terms of his communication and his messaging. And so we're seeing him sort of turn a corner yet again with that speech yesterday, the economic speech, where he lays out his ideas, but at the same time putting forth a clear contrast with what he would do compared to Hillary Clinton. Again, that's what I think his supporters would like to see, at least his supporters in Washington, people like Reince Priebus and others. The question is how long will he continue on that script? We've seen multiple times since he's become the presumptive nominee where he goes down the road of staying on script and then all of a sudden it's off the rails. And so, the anticipation is maybe he goes off the rails again, maybe he doesn't. And if he doesn't, I think you'll have a lot of at least happy people within the Republican Party who are behind him and are sticking with him, not to talk about all the people who are not sticking with him, but at least the people who are behind him, they'll be a little bit happier and calm donors and supporters down if he can stay on message.
And it's interesting, Steve, you have politicians saying that if he can stay on message, he'll become a little bit more palatable to them. You have others, for example, the folks who signed this national security letter who say, look, no matter what he says from this day to the election, there's nothing that he can say that can take back all of the things that he's already said that have given us insight into how he would govern should he be president of the United States. And so the question, I guess, is going to be which one of those tacks matters to the voters?
Well, that's the ultimate question, and what you're seeing, and you nailed it, right? There's plenty of Republicans who have just had enough of what Donald Trump has done in terms of going off message. They just say he's either reckless, whether you're a national security or foreign policy expert, or in the case of Susan Collins, the senator from Maine, who in an op-ed basically said all the things that he said up until this point, I just can't find myself supporting this man. Now, keep in mind, there are political reasons for people like Collins and other elected officials who've said what they've said, but ultimately, what are voters going to think? Are they going to listen to people like Susan Collins? Are they going to listen to these to these national security experts who have basically thrown Trump overboard, or are they going to listen to Trump's response to it, which is basically these are all Washington insiders. These are the people who have made or who have contributed to where America is right now, and America is not great anymore. And so why should you listen to these insiders? You should listen to me, who's going to be a change agent and fix what's wrong with Washington. That's going to be the ultimate question that voters are going to answer, and we'll see what happens. Right now, in terms of polling, it seems to be not on the side of Trump and on the side of the others.
You know, Steve, and we've been saying this over and over again, but I mean, just think back to John Kerry's campaign for the presidency and swift boating. I know you were cutting your teeth as a young Politico back then, but you know, the swift boating thing, right? They were able to raise serious questions of a man who had served in Vietnam about his capability of being commander-in-chief. And now you have something like this on an unprecedented level. And the question is that we are still wondering amongst ourselves, and the data will have to prove what ultimately pans out, whether or not this is going to matter.
Yeah, I think the difference is, I mean, if you look back at 2004, the swift boaters were going after what John Kerry, one of his biographical, big part of his biography, which was basically being a hero in Vietnam, and they were basically saying, no, he wasn't a hero. And then for weeks, the Kerry folks didn't even respond to that. They just didn't take it seriously enough, and then the damage was done at that point. I think with Trump, he can still play the outsider card. And so whenever any one of these insiders comes out and says, you're not qualified, you're reckless, you know, you pick the adjective, the negative adjective to describe what Trump would do to this country, he can just parry back and say, look, I'm the outsider. They're scared of outsiders. They're scared of change, and that's why they're saying this. These are insiders saying this. The question is will Americans, a majority of Americans, side with somebody like Trump in the long run, saying we just want change for change's sake and we don't care what these insiders think, or will they listen to the number of these folks, whether they're elected officials or former public servants, coming out and basically saying, look, we know what we're talking about, we've done this, and this guy is just not right for the country. Ultimately, that's the question that's going to be answered. And as I said, polling right now is siding on behalf of the folks who've actually done this or are currently serving, and not Donald Trump.
We'll have to see how it pans out. Steve Chaggaris in Washington for us. Steve, thank you.
Thanks, Vlad.